It seems like no political party in this country is immune to harboring troublesome characters. We have just witnessed the sacking of, the former DA Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. It is alleged that he was booted for being rude, arrogant, and an outright bully who mistook public office for his personal throne. And as the dust settles on that mess, let us talk about Dion George, the troublesome former minister whose own downfall was written long before the axe finally fell.
Molini, and welcome to yet another episode of Conversations with Lankosi. Now, this is the news commentary section where we will be offering insightful commentary and exploring various perspectives on the stories that shape our world.
Now, let us set the stage by, familiarizing ourselves with this guy, because truth be told, I also did not know who this man was until I came across an article about him being removed from his portfolio. Now, for those of you who do not know about this man who's at the center of it all, Dion George, or Dr. Dion George, I don't know what people call him. Dion George is a longtime DA insider who isn't exactly new to power pressure or controversy. It is said that he was born in Durban and, obviously polished throughout the years in finance. It was also said that, he climbed the DA ladder with precision, and by 2008, he landed in parliament. And soon after, he would then become one of the party's key, economic voices, a numbers guy who somehow found himself in charge of, South Africa's forests, fisheries, and environmental future. But what really set social media on fire was this ndaba, of him having this dual citizenship, especially when you look at the relationship between us and, the United States, Ogwamanje. So, yes, Dion George holds both a South African and a US passport, and while he insisted that everything was declared and above board, many South Africans couldn't help asking the obvious, which would be, when push comes to shove, where do your loyalties lie? Now, he became the minister because of the DA, and its joint partnership, or obviously the DA being a part of the GNU, and that is how he ended up becoming sworn in, as the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, which is a massive portfolio if you ask me. It is a powerful seat if you ask me. It is literally a global spotlight that is just being shown on you because of, Anywho, power sits differently on different people, because fast forward to November 2025, we have Dion, who wakes up to the news that he has been removed. He has been axed, gone, erased from cabinet. And not because he resigned, but because his term ended. He was removed. And here's the twist. The request did not come from Kongi. It didn't come from the MK, which is the official opposition, or any other party or the public. It came from his own party. It came from the Democratic Alliance. Reports point to internal conflicts, staff complaints, questionable behavior behind closed doors, and a minister who allegedly refused to play by the team rules. The DA said they needed energy, integrity, and excellence. But Dion wasn't giving any of that. Some insiders even whisper that it wasn't just, underperformance, but it was ego, attitude, and constant friction with people who were actually trying to work with him. Now that we have set the stage, let us get into the fall. Now, first and foremost, the behavior that shook the department. I mean, reports weren't soft, they weren't vague. They described a toxic environment inside his ministry. You have the staff who allegedly felt intimidated, humiliated, and pushed beyond breaking point. Claims included him calling people weak-minded, making deeply inappropriate remarks, and using fear as a management tool. You also have employees who cried in meetings, senior officials that said they had never experienced anything like this. And this wasn't just internal, guys. Ministers from other departments complained that George repeatedly contradicted cabinet, that he ignored decisions and went rogue on international platforms. And then we also have, Dr. Johan Swart, a forensic psychologist who compared his alleged behavior to the Stanford prison experiment, where ordinary people placed in positions of authority quickly became abusive. Her point was simple. Sometimes the role is more dangerous than the person. Give someone too much power, too little accountability, and too much pressure, and you may create a leader who justifies bullying as discipline, intimidation as strong leadership, and cruelty as efficiency. In George's case, guys, the environment amplified everything. Coalition politics, high pressure mandates, national and international scrutiny, weak internal checks, a perfect storm for authoritarian behavior. Now, Swart warns that this isn't just about Dion, but it is also a systemic problem. And without real checks and psychological awareness within leadership or, in the space of politics itself will continue producing leaders who crumble under power because they just cannot handle it. At number 3, we have the policy clashes that made him enemies, right? So behavior alone doesn't usually topple a minister. There were other forces at play. George repeatedly clashed with powerful environmental lobbies, especially around wildlife regulation. He pushed back against controversial commercial practices, which included parts of, the captive lion industry, and limited certain export quotas. That did not sit well with everyone. And just before a major international biodiversity summit, suddenly the chap is gone. Coincidence? Andazi. Nina xelela mna. Anywho, party discipline at number 4, or is it political convenience? I mean, the request for his removal came from his own party, like I stated in the intro. Guys, it came from his own party. The DA said they needed excellence, they needed integrity and energy. Now, between these lines, they wanted a minister who would fit the collective strategy, not someone who contradicted cabinets, clashed with colleagues, or refused to accept internal decisions. Now, when he reportedly refused a demotion, that was the final straw. Hey, this guy didn't even want to be called into order, guys. He really did not want to be called into order. And then we also have the bigger picture, which is why the story matters at number 5. This is point number 5, which falls under the fall category. Anywho, Dion George's downfall isn't just about a minister who got fired. It's a cautionary tale of how power can corrupt, how institutional culture shapes behavior, and how ambition that is unchecked can create real harm. Now, for viewers concerned about environmental justice, George's story raises questions about whether real conservation is possible when economic interests and politics collide. Now, for anyone interested in politics, this should serve as a reminder that power is a system and not just an individual, and that systemic reforms, not just personnel changes, are what ultimately matter. What happens now? Well, the DA's internal politics are now on display. Firing one of its own ministers exposes the cracks, in the DA's image. But then again, we can commend them for acting immediately. Unlike other political organizations, they could learn a thing or two, in all honesty. Okay, coming back to the point that I'm trying to make about the DA's internal politics being on full display. If you have one of their ministers behaving like this, what does it say about the party's vetting process? What does this say about their leadership pipelines and their oversight? What image does this paint? They acted, yes, but only after the situation became public and internal chaos was revealed. We then have my other point, which is the ministry enters a reset phase. The Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment lost a minister and a sense of direction overnight. Environmental policy doesn't pause when a minister leaves, and staff must now adapt to new leadership in the middle of major international negotiations. I really hope they're able to pull themselves out of this, in all honesty. Then we also have policy direction, which may shift, but quietly. Now, whenever a minister is replaced, priorities also shift. So I don't think I would be dreaming or hallucinating if I were to say that we should expect softened stances on certain conservation battles, more compromise with industry stakeholders and potentially delayed reforms, as they try to correct the flops that occurred under this one's leadership. And then you also have my last point, which is the GNU has to manage the optics. I mean, ever since they came out, this GNU has been, guys, I think when it comes to the GNU, it just exhausts me. The whole idea of a GNU for me is just, what? That's why I refer to it as a facade. But the Government of National Unity must explain why a minister was fired due to behavioral issues and policy clashes. The timing makes the GNU look tense. It makes it look fragmented. It makes it look reactive, especially ahead of major international environmental commitments. At the end of the day, Dion George's story is more than another political headline. It's about how quickly power can shift, how fragile leadership can be, and how political systems can enable destructive behavior until it becomes too loud to ignore. Dion George becomes one example in a long chain of leaders who forgot that public office is not a sanctuary from accountability. Rather, it is a spotlight. And for those who want to dive deeper, because most of my information I actually got from this article, the link to Dr. Swart's full article, along with other references mentioned in this video, will be in the description box below. That marks the end of today's video. Thank you so much for lending your eyes and ears. I hope that you found today's video informative. Please do not forget to click on that subscription button or light the notification bell so that you do not miss out on any